He walked into the bank with confidence, wearing the sharp suit of a man who had built an empire from the ground up. But within minutes, that confidence was tested in the most humiliating way. A manager, blinded by arrogance and prejudice, saw only the color of his skin, not the power behind his name. What happened inside those glass walls wasn't just an insult. It was a moment of pure disrespect that demanded justice. The question is, how do you respond when racism tries to strip away your dignity? For years, Marcus Johnson had lived the dream so many only imagined. A self-made CEO, his company stretched across multiple states, employing thousands and influencing industries that once ignored him. Every morning began the same. Early runs through his quiet neighborhood, a quick breakfast with his family, then straight into the whirlwind of meetings, calls, and decisions that shaped markets. Success wasn't handed to him. He carved it, out of hardship, sacrifice, and relentless determination. On this particular day, Marcus wasn't walking into a boardroom or a five-star hotel. He was stepping into something far more ordinary, a neighborhood bank branch, the kind of place where people lined up to cash checks and open savings accounts. For Marcus, this visit was supposed to be routine, a quick stop on his way to a meeting across town. But there was something in the air that morning. Perhaps it was the sharp stares as he entered, or the way conversation seemed to hush for just a moment too long. Marcus brushed it off. After all, this wasn't new to him. He had spent a lifetime facing quiet doubts, skeptical looks, and whispered judgments. What he didn't know was that today's visit would not end as just another errand. Within minutes, the simple act of walking up to a counter would unravel into a moment so humiliating, so unnecessary that it would echo far beyond those four walls. And the man behind the counter, the one who believed his position gave him power, was about to learn just how wrong he was. Marcus approached the counter, paperwork in hand, ready to finalize a transaction that most executives would delegate to assistants. But Marcus had always believed in handling some matters himself. It grounded him. It reminded him where he came from. The man behind the counter, a mid-level manager with a stiff tie and sharper glare, barely looked up. His eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe, lingering not on the documents, but on the man holding them. Then, with a smirk that cut deeper than any word, he pushed the papers back across the counter. "We don't process these kinds of requests here," the manager said flatly. His tone carried no hesitation, no explanation, only dismissal. Marcus paused, confused. The request was standard. Any customer could have walked in and completed it within minutes. He calmly explained again, pointing to the required forms. But the manager's expression hardened. His voice, now louder, carried across the lobby. "I said, we don't do this here. You'll need to leave." Heads turned, people waiting in. Lines shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to pretend they hadn't heard or to watch what was unfolding. Marcus felt the weight of every gaze. He wasn't just being denied service. He was being humiliated. Inside, a familiar fire stirred. This wasn't the first time. Not the first time someone saw his skin before his title. Not the first time his success was reduced to suspicion. But each time, it cut just as deep. Marcus tried once more, his voice measured, steady. "I believe you're mistaken. This transaction is well within your branch's capacity. Perhaps you should recheck the policy." The manager leaned in, his lips curling into something between arrogance and disdain. "We don't take instructions from people like you. Now step aside." The words landed heavier than a slammed door. "People like you." A silence followed, thick, suffocating. Marcus stood still, his pulse quickening, his mind racing through every moment in his career when he had fought for dignity in rooms that doubted his presence. The line of customers shifted again, some whispering, others pretending to scroll their phones. But nobody spoke up, and then came the final insult. The manager snapped his fingers at a nearby security guard. "Escort him out." It was a command. cold and sharp, stripping Marcus of his humanity in front of strangers. The guard hesitated, just for a second, but began to move forward. Marcus's jaw tightened. Every muscle in his body screamed to react, to fight, to remind them who he was. But he didn't. Not yet, because Marcus knew something the manager didn't. He held power far greater than anyone in that lobby could imagine, and in a matter of minutes, that power would shift the room entirely. The security guard stepped closer, his hand hovering near Marcus's arm, ready to usher him out like some unwelcome intruder. The whispers in the lobby grew louder. Some people raised their phones, pretending to check messages, but Marcus knew they were recording. The humiliation was now on display for anyone to see. The manager, puffed up with false authority, crossed his arms and sneered. "This isn't your place. Men like you don't belong here." The words hit like a knife. Marcus had faced racism in subtle forms his whole life, but this was raw, unmasked, and public. His chest tightened, a mixture of fury and disbelief surging through him. For a moment, he considered walking out, swallowing the insult just to move on, but something inside refused. The very air seemed to thicken, the tension pressing down on every soul in the room. The security guard paused, uneasy, sensing the storm beneath Marcus's calm exterior. And then Marcus spoke. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of authority, the kind of authority that silences rooms. "Do you know who I am?" the manager scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Doesn't matter. You're nobody here." That was the moment the ground shifted. Marcus slowly reached into his jacket, pulling out not a wallet, not identification, but a company badge, a CEO's credential that carried more power than the manager could ever comprehend. He held it up for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the lobby. The customers, once silent, leaned forward. The guard froze. The manager's smirk faded, replaced by confusion, then panic. Marcus locked eyes with him. Calm, controlled, but burning with quiet fire. And in that heartbeat, everyone knew the tables had just turned. The bank lobby fell into silence. The once smirking manager now stood pale, his authority evaporating in an instant. Marcus didn't raise his voice, didn't lash out. He didn't need to. Power, real power, doesn't shout. It speaks in actions. Within the hour, phone calls were made. Corporate executives were informed. And by the end of the day, the branch that had tried to humiliate him was facing an investigation that would change its leadership forever. The staff who stood by silently, watching the injustice unfold, were forced to answer for their complicity. The manager, the man who thought he could reduce Marcus to people like you, was escorted out, no longer in control of anyone's dignity or future. But for Marcus, the victory wasn't about revenge. It was about principle, about proving that dignity is not something granted by a uniform, a desk, or a title. It is inherent. It cannot be stripped away by arrogance or prejudice. And yet, as he walked out of those glass doors, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on the truth. Not everyone in his position could fight back. Not everyone had the platform, the resources, or the power to turn humiliation into accountability. For many, the story ends with silence, pain, and another scar hidden from the world. That is the deeper injustice, that in a world that claims progress, moments like this still happen every single day. So ask yourself, how many more times will we allow someone's humanity to be questioned, dismissed, or denied because of the color of their skin? And when the next moment comes, and it will we stay silent, or will we finally demand change? Your voice matters. Subscribe now and join a community that refuses to stay silent against racism.